They say a week is a long time in politics. So I don't know how long 12 years is. But regardless of whether it's a week, 12 years, the feeling of victory feels just as good as you remember it from all those years ago. This is Talk of the Trinity. I'm Baz, and with me is Will, and welcome to the show. Those of you paying attention to the cryptic intro may have read between the lines and got the reference of 12 years to the last time Villa won at Old Trafford. Happened again this weekend. We'll get into that. In today's show, we'll also continue our Ultimate 11 with the left midfield, which I think we previewed it a little last week. I think there's going to be some tasty conversation going on there. And then we're going to look forward to Villa Tottenham on Sunday. And we got a special guest with us to talk about things from the Tottenham side of the fence. We'll tease that. We'll let you have a think about who that may be. And they are, showing our international reach, because we just had the international break with international villains. We've expanded to international fans. So it's going to be a view from across the pond. But first up, we've teased it enough. 12 years. Not quite as long as 25 years ago. Something happening 25 years ago. Anniversary. Big gig. Nebworth. Linked in quite nicely to the fact that Villa Man United was pushed forward because of a gig that was taking place in Manchester on the same day. Not Oasis, sadly. The Courtineers. Not as good as Oasis, some might say. But whether it's 12 years, whether it's 25 years, some memories live forever. And we've danced around it enough, so we just got to roll with it now. We'll see how many my co-host Will can crowbar into the intro before we actually start talking about the events of Saturday 12:30 at Old Trafford. Man United 0, Aston Villa 1. Guessing, you were feeling like you wanted a house party after this one.
Oh, mate. Proper, mate. Cigarettes and alcohol everywhere. It was a time for a champagne supernova. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, of course you do.
Well, I think Courtney Hause certainly is going to cast a shadow over, the history of this fixture with his 88th minute winner. We previewed the game and you thought we'd get a result and you're confident of us scoring, and we thought it'd be a tight game. We were interested in terms of how the tactics were going to pan out.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say this is another example. Villa going on the road against a supposed better team and looking for periods of the game and large periods of the game, the better team ourselves. Do we now have to face the new reality that this Villa team is actually pretty good?
I think we do, and we had glimpses of this last season. You think that the only two teams, bar Man City, that we got low points numbers against last season were Burnley and Brighton. 1 point against Brighton, and that was away, and Burnley 1 point at home as well, I think, to them, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, I think we had about 85 shots against Burnley, if I remember.
El Ghazi, it was his first game back in the team, wasn't it, really, or one of them, and he hit the bar. And so we had those glimpses last year, and I really do feel that we can go toe-to-toe with anyone. There's no reason why we shouldn't be getting results like we are. I mean, you look at the spiel from the papers, and it's Man United should be beating teams like Aston Villa if they want to mount a serious title challenge. Why shouldn't teams like Aston Villa be going and getting results against the Sky Six if they want to harbour realistic aspirations of breaking into Europe this season?
And we did, in terms of, sadly not on the legitimate TV, so, not on BT. They had a trifling matter at Stamford Bridge going on that occupied their attention. But we are, from a few weeks ago, we talked about it on the podcast in terms of some fans calling for Dean Smith's head. I think this is the last time we have to talk about that now, isn't it?
I'd hope so. I mean, we know anything can happen in football, and we've seen fans on Twitter as well, and we've spoken to international villains, all of whom had a great insight into the team, into the club, into the windows. But I think most people have said, we need another midfielder, we needed another midfielder. Jacob Ramsey has just stepped up and gone, nah, mate.
Yeah, another lively performance. I wasn't quite sure what was going on when he fell down in the penalty box. I don't know if he was pleading injury, trying to hide, but again, we mentioned it after the Everton game, getting in positions. You got to hope eventually he's going to be able to put one away, which I suppose we'll come on to putting chances away in a moment. But in terms of set up with three at the back again, I think we suspected that was likely the way we were going to line up.
We did.
But demonstrating how 3-5-2, 5-3-2 can be seen as quite a negative tactic in some circumstances. England in the Euros, when they played it, demonstrated it can be attacking and very effective if you get your wing-backs forward. And that's precisely what Villa did, especially in the first half. I mean, that combination between Cash and Target should have had a goal early on.
I mean, I don't mean to do this, but Target made a right Dixie's dinner of it, didn't they? That lovely cross. But it was the pass from McGinn as well, straight through to Cash. No, I didn't think McGinn would play because of his head injury. You called him for the team. Fair play for that. But those wing-backs look dangerous. They probably need to add in, 3 to 5 goals a season and a number of assists. You'd hope 7 to 10. But we just seem to have an abundance of talent that will suit this formation, because I don't think every game will have wing-backs necessarily. Leon Bailey isn't going to be a left wing-back. He's going to be a left winger in a 5-man midfield with Kashi on the right. There's going to be times where we go a bit more 3-4-1-2, like we did on Saturday when Buendia came on. And how refreshing it was with 10, 15 minutes left. Dean Smith went, do you know what? Actually, we can win this. Let's bring on Buendia and let's bring on Cameron Archer. Man United are there for the taking.
I think that shows the progress in the quality of the squad, because we did try and go toe for toe in the first season that we got promoted, and that resulted in us before lockdown having the worst defence in the league, I think, because we just didn't have enough experience. I don't know if it's necessarily quality, because a lot of the players who were in that team were in the squad or playing on Saturday, so yeah. I don't think it necessarily wasn't a very good team. It was just getting used to the levels and the demands and the expectations of the Premier League, very much including the manager as well. And you get punished in the Premier League, and that's my recollection of the first season back, just stupid mistakes and getting punished. I mean, that hasn't entirely gone away. We talked about it. Chelsea away made stupid mistakes. You get punished. But it's refreshing, as you said, to be able to go and make attacking changes without having that real feeling of dread kind of in the stomach, going, oh God, we're going to get done here, kind of on the break. Yeah. I think partly that's the shape, partly that's increased experience, partly it's having Emi Martinez in goal. I think that helps. But yeah, I think we've been able to build over the last few years, as we've talked about, to have an increased sense of belief based on not blind optimism, based on results. And we've refined our game, and I think the team now, not that they would really kind of say at the time that it was, we weren't really sure how we were going to do without that certain player who cannot be named, but I think the last few weeks, in terms of not just the results, the way that we played as well, has kind of really put to bed, I think, in the players' mind. You can see it in terms of looking to the future, feeling, we can go to places like Old Trafford now and get results. And you mentioned McGinn pass, for the chance that Target didn't take. He's really stepped up to the plate, I think, in terms of, I'm going to be the main man now. You know, I'm going to use this as my platform. I mean, he was kind of linked with moves away in the summer, but not really. I think it was just kind of a lazy day in the journalist's office, I think, sometimes. Like, oh, who needs a midfielder? Oh, they do. Oh, who's good? Oh, McGinn, let's throw them in there. It didn't really seem serious. Might be getting a bit more serious now if he carries on playing like that.
Yeah, very well could be, and I think you're right. He's stepped up. You know, main bloke at Hibs, come to the Villa, hasn't had the chance to be the main bloke at the Villa, but he's got that hustle and bustle. He's that type of midfielder, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, in our Ultimate CM, that the Villa faithful like. He gets up and down the pitch. He's got one foot in the door of being a Villa legend in the future as well. He's probably vice captain or within that reckoning at the moment. But he's got something about him. He looks fitter also. He's not afraid to get back and put a challenge in and get forward. Okay, he needs to cut out a few silly things from his game, like the tackle that got him the yellow card at the weekend. But McGinn's part of the heartbeat of our team, but it's nice that we're not just relying on one player again, as we mentioned before. And I think going back even further than Man U, you look at Chelsea, where we drew 1-1 with Chelsea, really. Our kids drew 1-1 with 300 million's worth of talent, very much. I know we did have some of our usual players playing as well. But Chukwuemeka looked very good when he was on the pitch. He had the most successful dribbles in the whole game, and he only played a half. Yes. Philogene Bidace came on, had a chance to score, and Cameron Archer, what a header. The future looks incredibly bright.
If we can nail him down to a contract, I like Shaw. Contract up at the end of the season.
Yeah.
It's easy from the outside looking in to go get the money down to sign the deal. Don't know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of how the negotiations are going. But yes, you've got to hope in terms of they're scoring a hat-trick against Barrow, which I think is still, it's better than I could do. I mean, I just get two. But stepping it up to Chelsea away, and also the fact that, you'd had chances before in the game, hadn't taken them. So to be able to have that self-confidence to...
Yeah.
Not the easiest finish in the world.
No, but what a finish.
It was more the surprise he didn't take a penalty, I think, in the end, based on what was going on with his performance during the game. But yeah, a very positive performance. We thought we'd be able to, if we kept it tight, then Chelsea may be getting a little concerned. Roughly, if you're going to pick the game plan, it roughly went to the plan. And then unfortunately, it was like, oh shit, we ain't got... Are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah.
Oh, good. No censoring required. We're like, oh no, we forgot there's no extra time now. We got to go straight to penalties. And there was debate for England in the Euros final about whether we picked the right lineup for penalties. I don't want to dwell on it too much because, it's gone. I don't think we picked the right lineup for the penalties. But taking Chelsea to penalties at Stamford Bridge, you mentioned kind of the disparity in the financial value of the team, and they were on a good run, European champions. I think, even though it was a different team to Old Trafford, I think that confidence of, we played well, we're just waiting for that result, really, in order to justify the way we're playing, the slight nuance in the tactics. That led into Saturday. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to, even though we're a different team, to have gone and played like we did at Old Trafford if there was feeling behind the scenes of, oh, these tactics aren't working, or we're not really playing up to our level, or we're not sure in kind of the manager or anything like that. So the continuation was there, and you've got to look in terms of when we're going to so-called the Sky Six. I mean, we were going to touch upon it in the Tottenham preview. They're a Super League club, apparently.
Yeah.
But, I think there's going to be very few teams now who you're going to be going to thinking, oh, we got no chance. Which is coming from me, who is probably one of the most pessimistic sometimes Villa fans you can think of. But yeah, I mean, as I said, we got to change the narrative. I think, in terms of these performances, and long may it continue.
Definitely, I've always been a positive Villa fan. I like to think I have, even when we were bottom of the league, 5 years from safety. In that awful Premier League season, it wasn't over until it was over for me.
I think we just got out of the relegation zone now, haven't we?
But I thought we'd win on penalties against Chelsea. I thought we'd get a result against United. I said we'd put 3 past Everton. It's swashbuckling football. There's a swagger behind them. They've got an even better swagger than Nebworth, than Liam Gallagher at the moment. And all we need, I think, is a few extra players and a couple of goals for Ings and Watkins. And I don't think top 6 in Europe will be enough. I think it will soon become, all right, well, where's the top 4? How far away are we? And that, it might sound a bit ridiculous, but you go and get Axel Tuanzebe and you actually buy him up to 15 million or so, because United ain't going to want to sell him. And you go and get another striker in who can challenge both Watkins and Ings. And you say to Archer, you don't want to stay, then see you later. And I don't like this player, but maybe a Chris Wood type of a player, if he wasn't too much money. He scores goals in the Premier League. He's a different option as well. You go and add those two to our squad in January. We're top 8 easily. We're probably top 6. Cameron Archer, though, going back to him and what you mentioned, if he doesn't sign a new contract for us, he becomes the next Russian Hepburn Murphy. I think he just pales into obscurity, unfortunately, whereas I think if he sticks round, he'll do well.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, I think he's got more natural talent than Hepburn Murphy. I'd say in terms of it depends, I suppose, from his perspective, which other clubs are sniffing around. I mean, I think, realistically speaking, I think there'd be very few clubs who, from his perspective, you could honestly say from a footballing perspective that he's going to get a better chance than he is at Villa. And, we have had a few years whereby maybe not as many youth players have been coming through the team. I think that's changed now. I mean, you can see in terms of, you mentioned the players against Chelsea on Wednesday night, youth will get a chance in this team.
Yep.
So hopefully, we can do a deal. Hopefully everybody, all the parties see sense. And it is onwards and upwards. I mean, some would say it's getting better, man.
Oh, mate, too right. And hopefully we don't look back in anger at all of this, and we hope that the wheels stay on. Sorry, there's nothing for that one.
Well, somebody was looking back in anger was Solskjaer on Saturday when Courtney Hause knocks it in with 2 minutes to go. We'll deal with this. It tried to stoke the fans of controversy. Solskjaer by trying to claim that the goal was offside. Do you think we got lucky?
Considering that Leicester had those 2 ruled off last week, yeah, we did. But, you're going to get a difference of opinion all around the world, aren't you, with things like this. Was he offside? Was he not offside? Regardless of it, that run and the header that Courtney Hause made to get that goal was fantastic. There's no taking away from the set-piece delivery, the way he managed to navigate himself past 3 United players, get rid of Cavani, who's not a bad header of the ball either, and put it straight into that top corner. I don't think David De Gea would have had much of a chance anyway, to be honest with you, regardless of Watkins standing in front of him. Great goal. Courtney Hause now hopefully keeps his place in the team, and that's no offence to Tuanzebe. I think if you play your way into the team for whatever reason, you deserve a chance to keep your place if you play well.
Yeah, and mentioned goal from a corner, set pieces again, looking very strong during the game. We had a few chances from corners that we probably should have buried beforehand. Yeah. So having that set piece coach is obviously doing a good job, looking dangerous, even though in terms of the way Courtney Hause told the story after the game was he wasn't meant to be him going for the header, and that it was Tyrone Mings, and he kind of said Tyrone went to him, why don't you just slide away from your marker?
Oh.
And then he did. It was a great run, great finish, great reference in there if you're keeping track of how many we're trying to shoehorn in here.
Oh, mate.
But at one end, elation. At the other end, despondency for Courtney Hause when the penalty decision goes against him for handball. Do you think that was the right decision? Unfair? Ref got it wrong?
I think it was a fair decision, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it was a natural hand position, but his arms away from his body as well. If it had been down the other end, we'd have wanted it, wouldn't we? I mean, if the referee had said no, we'd have gone, whatever, that's fine, we don't mind. But no, it was a definite penalty. But let me tell you, the very best set piece routine that Austin McPhee has done for us was that sledging from Emi Martinez to Cristiano Ronaldo. What a genius Austin McPhee is. You take it, come on, you take it, bring it on down, man.
Yep.
Come and have a shot at me. And no, it goes miles over the crossbar. Apparently, rumour has it that football beat the Villa coach back to Villa Park.
I think it nearly hit the space shuttle Columbia. I think the way that went. But I saw it in the aftermath. Tyrone Mings running over to Martinez. They obviously had a conversation about it. Going about it looked like Mings was going, mind game. So It looks like it was deliberate. Obviously it was deliberate because he went and did it.
Yeah.
But they've obviously had a conversation about it beforehand. It didn't seem like it was a spur of the moment solo effort. Probably
all in the mind.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly got on Bruno Fernandes's mind, and probably the last penalty he's going to take for Man United whilst Ronaldo is on the pitch.
I'd imagine so. That's the thing that people love about Emi Martinez is his shithousery. I'm not a fan of that sort of stuff in football, but when we're doing it, we're getting away with it. And Douglas Luiz as well was absolutely loving it, going up and laughing at Fernandes after. And you watch that Everton game, when Digne scores the own goal, Leon, I'm still giving it to you. Ezri Konsa looks straight at Ben Godfrey, shouts and laughs in his face on the line. And you're like, mate, you're a geezer. You, my friend, are a proper rock and roll star.
I think you do need a bit of edge. The best teams, not necessarily the ones who, go around like kicking people all of the time and, just have no attempt at skill, just lumping it. But the best teams do have an edge to them. You look in terms of Man City, masters at tactical fouls. Pochettino, when he was in charge of Spurs, they were very good at it. Liverpool, they not averse to a snidey tackle or two, and Klopp, in terms of mind games in the press. So, you got to have that edge, and it's as long as it doesn't go over the line, which I don't think it has. I think it's good kind of to see a team who are able to pull that off. I mean, if we weren't getting results, then it just looks terrible. But it's kind of, you got to have the rough with the smooth. You got to have you got to be able to back it up. If you're going to laugh in somebody's face, you got to be able to back it up. And at the moment, we are. And obviously it was another feather in the cap, in terms of whoever is, whether it falls under the set piece coach or whether we do have a snide technology department who are dealing with that, really. And it was nice to see a Man United manager sour grapes after the game. Or you wouldn't catch, kind of all going around the ref or whatever like that. It's like, okay.
I like how Matt Kendrick pointed that out on the on his Twitter page. Thought it was very, very good.
I mean, I think he did it all by himself, didn't he? I mean, I think it was, just an impromptu consideration that they had.
Mate, he knowed me. You know what I mean? There I am stood like, what's the story? Mate, come on. well, if he gets him a couple of likes and retweets, I'm quite happy.
You know, the price of doing business, and the price of doing business at Old Trafford was 3 points for Villa. Don't want to focus too much on the negatives because it was a great performance and we get the results. But was there any concern in your mind about Watkins? The fact another couple of chances, not taking them, hasn't got off the ground yet in terms of the goal scoring for this season?
The only thing that I suppose concerns me a little bit is that it wasn't Danny Ings in those positions, but they're obviously working a certain way and we're getting the 3 points, so that's fine. I do think that Danny Ings gets those chances he scores. It's a little bit concerning that Ings now hasn't scored in 3 Premier League games and he was the one to be taken off, though. I suppose I'm not so surprised when Watkins presses as well as he does and he created those chances, but he was a bit greedy with that one where he was one-on-one with Varane, cut inside and had his shot. He had Dougie and Ings to the side of him and you'd have hoped that both of them would have hit the target. If they had of, how would it have gone? You know, I hope that they'd have scored and it would have carried on winning. I think Man United may have equalised. I know we wouldn't in the end. That's absolutely fine by me.
Yep. I think in terms of the slight concern, if you're going to have a concern at this stage, is whether Ings is having to potentially sacrifice his number one attribute in terms of that finishing, getting in the box in order to accommodate Watkins. But I think, as you said, when you go and win, it's a nice problem to have in terms of ultimately talking about not scoring more goals.
Yeah.
So evidently got, you know, some positive things to look forward to, and just thinking that they both start scoring, we'll be knocking 3 or 4 past teams.
Well, we had the better chances, didn't we, again? And you can see that Watkins is very much the pouncer on the ball. Ings is the late arriver into the box, isn't he? So if they can work on that, getting down that wing, and Watkins putting it back out to Ings, I'm sure he'll start scoring again. And I mentioned last week, for me, the player who's going to be in that 6-yard box, tapping the ball in, getting his head on the ball is going to be Watkins. From the edge of the box to the 6-yard box, that'll be Danny Ings. When he's gone 5 or 6 or 10 games without scoring, I'll start worrying then, I think. But we've got goals in this team. We've got creativity. We've got pace as well. And it would appear that we've got a winning mentality as well.
Yeah, and international break coming up. We'll see if one or both of them get called up to the England squad. If neither of them do, then that's another couple of weeks on the training ground.
Well, yeah, definitely. And it also means that nobody taps them up, doesn't it? Especially with the rumours of Spurs after Watkins, you know.
It's nice, that rumour, in a funny type of way, because usually when you see Villa players linked with moves to other clubs, there is usually that, or historically there's been that feeling of dread of, oh God, you know, how long is this going to be before a player goes? It's nice hearing that rumour after winning at Old Trafford, seeing we're in the top half. You see kind of come across, Watkins link with move away. Oh God, who's this? Spurs? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not too worried about Spurs just yet, you know, based on what's going on at Spurs.
I've been more worried about the Ramsey rumour. So Ramsey's been linked with Man City, which we mentioned before, coming on air today. You can call it coming on air. Out of the two, I assume that you'd be more worried about Ramsey as well because of it being Man City. We know what they can be like with going after players. And, you know, to be fair to Man City, they're a team that are probably going to win trophies. They've got more chance of winning trophies than us and getting into Europe. Tottenham have potentially got more chance of getting into Europe, but I think we're a lot closer to being on an even keel with them. We're closer to them than Cavani was to Hause when he netted on Saturday.
Yeah. Man City, yeah, you can't be worried because they're one of the best teams in the country, one of the best teams in Europe. So if they're coming in for your players, then yeah, I mean, there's a natural hierarchy in the football system in terms of, you know, even the best teams in England are still below Real Madrid, Man United. well, Man United, I'm blaming Man United, I meant to say Barcelona. But yeah, well, when Barcelona can find some pennies down the back of the sofa, that they weren't able to give Messi, then yeah, a lot of players will see Real, Barca as a pinnacle even above Man United, Man City. But in terms of English football, yeah, there's going to be teams, used to be Spurs losing their players to Man United, and they kind of rise up a bit. As things currently stand, I mean, we'll touch upon it later on in the podcast, no doubt. Am I worried about losing players to Spurs at the moment? Not really, based on the way they are. But yeah, I mean, I think there's always a need not to be complacent, a need when a team's moving forwards, people generally want to stick around if it's kind of within their short, medium term aims. And yeah, I mean, Grealish obviously wants a generational talent, and that's very difficult to keep hold of when you're not where he wants to be right now. And obviously he, as we talked about, has England considerations, World Cup considerations going in. Ramsey's not quite at that level yet. Obviously, if Man City come in and put 30, 40, 50 million on the table, or whatever figure it is that will raise eyebrows at Villa Park, then yeah, you got to be a little worried. But it's that type of rumour you can't do anything about. It's a sign of progress in a way that your players have been linked with those top clubs. I mean, there weren't very many being linked with top clubs kind of 5 years ago, as it were. And in terms of it's good in terms of some players linked with clubs who you kind of feel you're competing with, because you don't have to worry about them. Whereas previously you're worried about everybody kind of coming in for your players. So obviously not a nice problem to have if all your players decide they want to leave. But I think in terms of even teams like Leicester, traditionally over the last few years, they'd always sell one player in the summer, to a Chelsea and then they'd replace them with a lower value player, build them up, and then another one goes the following summer, and they've managed to improve season on season. Funnily enough, the only season they haven't done that is this summer, and they haven't started very well, kind of in the league. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think if you have as part of the model that you might lose a player, we're investing a lot of money in the academy, as we talked about. Lots of youth players now coming through, chances in the first team. Yeah, as I said, you don't want to lose your best players, but it's not a worry of it's all going to fall apart, because we lost our best player and it hasn't fallen apart. So, in terms of, again, I'd be worried more in terms of if somebody comes in for Martinez. Yeah. That is a lot more difficult position to replace. I think in terms of, I think we've got a very good team, so I'm not saying all our players are terrible, but two players in the Villa team who, if we sold, I'd be not worried, but struggling to see how we could replace them. Martinez and McGinn.
Martinez, definitely. I think for McGinn, I mean, Sanson's obviously getting injured quite a bit, so we haven't seen much of him yet. But you've got Chukwuemeka, you've got Jacob Ramsey, you've got Buendia, you've got Aaron Ramsey, you've got Reiki, who's currently on loan as well at Stockport. There's a few players there. For the type of player McGinn is a Milner-esque player, we probably don't have that as well in our youth setup that we're aware of at the moment. But I think regardless, I think Martinez is our ultimate world-class player, and he is a world-class player. I rate world-class players on players who have won trophies domestically and have won something internationally, usually won something internationally, but have definitely won domestically. So a Martinez, I wouldn't put Harry Kane in the world-class bracket because of that. There's an argument there for it. We'll get to that later anyway. But no, Martinez is the only one I'd worry about. I think you're right, though. Anybody else is replaceable, and I'd probably have a little cry if Danny Ings left, like I did when Luke Young left.
Yeah, I mean, especially if he left next week. I mean, that really would be a short turnaround.
Only other player, though, to be fair, I haven't mentioned him, didn't need him on Saturday, surprisingly, after that 21 minutes against Everton. Leon Bailey, you get rid of. But then again, we beat Man United without him, so would we?
I think the thing with Bailey, obviously he looks a very good player, And we want to see him fit, integrate into this team, because he's going to add to it a great deal. If he left in January being injured, you couldn't miss what you didn't have, really. We'd have that 21 minutes forever. But yeah, if it's a position whereby he plays as well as we think he's going to do, integrates himself into the team over the next couple of seasons, then yeah, I can see him approaching a situation whereby you'd be pretty disappointed to lose him and kind of think, oh, okay, who's coming next? But really nice problems to have.
Yeah, it would have been, look what you could have had, but we have had him. He's been great. And at the end of the day, we just beat Man United at Old Trafford. It doesn't get much better than that, and we can dine off that. Hopefully it's not for the next 25 years, as we've that infamous concert that we've referenced quite a few times. But it's nice to see us where we are in the league, especially with the run of games that we've got coming up as well, up until Christmas really. There aren't too many hard ones, which we'll obviously discuss over the next few weeks. And we'll discuss Tottenham a little bit later. But it's a good time to be a Villa fan.
Yeah, so it was 25 years, then 12 years. So marking 2027 for the next win at Old Trafford.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it needs to be a regular thing. If we want to be the best, we've got to go and beat those teams now. Beat them, go and beat Tottenham at the weekend, and then a bloke called Joe's coming back soon. So it'd be nice to take 3 off them.
Next in the series of our Ultimate Villa 11 is left midfield. If you've been listening to the previous instalments in this series, we've gone through the back line, we've picked our goalie, we've gone right midfield, we've gone centre midfield. So we're getting towards the business end of the pitch now. Centre forwards to come next time around, but that left wing place in the team sheet needs to be penciled in. In terms of the team sheets being penciled in for mine and Will's 11 as opposed to the fans' 11, roughly kind of on the same wavelength, but a few key differences. Go and check out the Twitter page, for the running tally of the starting 11s we've got there. But we previewed it last week when we were talking about right midfield. I think this is going to be a tasty one in terms of the left midfield. But before we get to that, a brief outline of what we're loosely describing as rules. We split Villa's time in the Premier League into 3 decades, 92-93 until 2001-2002, then 2002-2003 until 2011-2012, and then 2012-2013 to the present day. We pick 1 or 2 from each of that decade, depending on how we're feeling at the time of recording. Then we put them together for a final vote where we pick our entry in the Ultimate 11, and then we put that out to the fans to have their say as well. They have to have played permanently for Villa, so loan players don't qualify for our team, although they may get an honourable mention, and you only get to have 1 shot at getting into the team. So if you've been up for consideration previously, you can't slip in another place later on, which is going to come into play for a few of the players who've played left midfield during the last 30 years that we've talked about previously. So getting straight into it for the first decade, 92-93, 01-02, we have had, for the latter half of the decade, as we touched upon previously, we didn't play a left winger. So that has narrowed the field somewhat from who we're going to potentially be able to choose from. So I'm going real old school in terms of right at the start of the 92-93 decade. And probably not the best player to ever play for Villa, but I remember watching him, a young prospect, hoping that he was going to become something. I remember being really disappointed when we sold him to Wolves for peanuts, kind of. I think it was, a couple of years into the Premier League. I want to go for Steve Froggatt to begin with. He was on the cusp of being a regular player in the Premier League, 92-93. He shared the left wing position with the other person who no doubt will be near the top of the list for consideration in that first decade. But Yeah, I remember him being, like a young, exciting player, kind of hoping that he would have that left wing spot for years. Didn't work out. I mean, you got to look in terms of his career after Villa. Meant that, it wasn't the great what if that it could have been. It was just injuries affected the career, really. But yeah, 92-93, one of the first seasons I remember as a Villa fan. Steve Froggatt was there, so on the basis we're maybe, depending on what you got to say, Will, for this decade, struggling with numbers. Froggatt's going in there.
I really hope that I'd have been able to have said this person, but he didn't turn up in a Villa shirt. However, you look at him at Newcastle, you look at Tottenham, David Ginola played for us in that time. I'm not considering him at all. For me, it's between two players, really. And one of them is more of an honourable mention, that would be Alan Thompson. He came for $2 million from Bolton. He was the main player at Bolton, really, around that time, or one of them. Came to us, he was more of a left centre midfielder, I think. Scored a few goals, played for a couple of seasons, but never really set the world on fire as much as we'd have liked him to, and eventually went off to Celtic and did do really well up there. Apart from him, a player who I didn't see a lot of, but was around for a couple of years as well at the start of that Premier League season. And apparently he used to go down the wing like a torpedo. Got to be Tony Daly, a player who won the League Cup with us and was there as well in those first couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think realistically, in terms of ability, that minor detail, Daly is above Froggatt. I mean, he started, as you mentioned, the League Cup final. And in terms of, I think it was, he had an involvement in one of the goals. I think his shot hit I think it was the final goal. His shot hit the post, and then Atkinson went in for the rebound, and Kanchelskis handballed it on the line. He was kind of sharing the spot in the first couple of years with Froggatt. It was in terms of nearing the end of his career when he was at Villa. I mean, he burst onto the scene in the mid-80s, played for England. So, real tricky winger. I mean, if you're looking in terms of, if you're stretching it back in terms of 40 years or 50 years, then yeah, I think Daly's place or consideration for a place would be a lot higher up the list. But yeah, I mean, even though I'm the one who suggested, Froggatt, just for purely personal reasons, if I'm getting my objective hat on, then yeah, you probably would put Daly above Froggatt. But you mentioned Alan Thompson. See, yep, he had a couple of seasons. Most of the others who played left midfield are ones who kind of disqualified because we've already talked about them. Obviously, Gav Barry.
Yeah.
Paul Merson had a season where he played a few games left midfield.
Yeah.
Lee Hendry played left midfield a few games. So really, I think we did mention him briefly. I know how this is going to go down, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm only mentioning him, but we've got Hassan Kashlu.
Move on.
I think that's the perfect segue. Really, there is literally nothing more to say in terms of.
No, not Kashlu, mate. Oh, no.
So moving swiftly on before we have a diplomatic incident, takes us on to the second decade, 2002-2003.
Who are we picking from that decade first? Who are you going with?
Tony Daly.
Tony Daly. Okay, fair enough.
Personal choice, I go Froggatt. In terms of, I do have to, I have a duty to the team to get the best 11 on the pitch. So I do have to go Daly. Similar for you?
Yeah, I'm happy with Daly. Yeah.
Moving on. This is the decade whereby I sense some of the big hitters are coming to town, because Mayman really, for left midfield, once he got going at Villa, had an impact, shall we say. I think we've got to go for Ashley Young.
Ashley Young was fantastic for the Villa. That left wing position, he terrorised teams. He scored some absolute belters as well. Bolton away, beautiful bender around Jussi Jääskeläinen. The the first goal he scored against Blues in the 5-1 win, my personal favourite Ashley Young goal, the second one in the 5-1 win where he dropped the shoulder and sent 2 Blues players off for a hot dog, went through, shot block, came back out and he converted it straight away. And he deservedly got a move to Man United at that time. I read a piece about Ashley Young this week in The Athletic. Not in The Athletic, it was Birmingham Live, and they mentioned about how much Gerard Houllier used to love Ashley Young, and he was one player who he got a connection with, really, and he was very upset when he left the Villa. He wanted him to stay, even though Houllier had literally just left the Villa himself at that time. But Young was a remarkable talent for us, one of our greatest ever Premier League players, I would say, really. And he was a driving force behind that O'Neill team that got us to finish where it was. And he always put in 100%, even after that, when he played under other managers as well. You know, for me, Ashley Young, quality.
He's certainly up there, I think, in terms of quality. And I especially brought him from Watford for quite a lot of money. There was slight reservations as to, he's got potential, but how good really is he? You know, kind of how much is he going to progress? And, you know, felt his way into the team to begin with, you know, kind of a bit stop-start. But once he developed, once he, you know, kind of, as you said, that Martin O'Neill team, he was an integral part of it on that left wing. Near the end of his time, I think because he was clearly the best player, we just let him play where he liked, from recollection. If you want to play up front, yeah, go up front. Behind the striker, yeah, go and do that. So it was realistically, by that time, the only way we were going to keep him for an extra year, to kind of let him dictate, literally, kind of what was going on the field. And Young, we touched upon it previously, there was a resignation when he left, but I don't think that there was a particularly fond welcoming back over the first couple of years. I remember the McLeish season. We were at Old Trafford near the end of the season. United won 4-0. Funnily enough, I thought it was one of our better away performances, and I was walking out the ground, and 2 United fans went, "God, Villa are dreadful. That's the worst team I've seen all season," which demonstrates how terrible Villa were that season. But I remember Young, it was dived for the penalty. Yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're going to do that, you know, kind of, yeah, you know, it's kind of not me personally, but it's like, we gave you the platform to get a move from Man United. And, you know, you could say it's cutting edge at that top level, but yeah, that didn't sit well with me, and I don't think it sat well with a lot of Villa fans. And so whenever he came back to Villa Park after that, I don't think he got a very warm reception. But time has healed most of the wounds from what I can see. When he was linked with Villa in the summer, it was, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not, you know, you're not going to wish badly on a player coming back, but, you know, it was kind of, okay, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I think he seems to have won over the fans relatively quickly in his return, and I think kind of because of the journey Villa have been on since Ashley Young left, because of the lows more than anything, you can appreciate a player as good as Young wanting to move on. And, you know, realistically speaking, he wouldn't have stuck around at Villa for much longer anyway, even if he would have done, based on the way the team's going. So when you're removed from the emotional epicentre of 10 years ago and when he was leaving, you're just left with the memories of, you know, a really good player and a really good team. And, you know, I think certainly in terms of that decade of consideration, we'll talk about a few other players, but he's not, unless there's a real left field prediction coming out there, I think, you know, he's going to be very hard to top for this decade.
Considering he started as a striker for us, didn't he? Because he was very far upfield, as you mentioned, when he was at Watford. We turned him into the left winger that he was. Yeah,
and, you know, I think, you know, in terms of, obviously he went on to the proverbial bigger and better things, but we did play a big impact in his career, and, you know, and that was part of being in that team. Somebody who wasn't in quite as good a team, but who gets an honourable mention, you know, he had more than a season, but kind of one season I remember when we were season ticket holders down there, broke into the team. Peter Whittingham left midfield, that 2003-2004 season under O'Leary. He's not the greatest player in the world, but I think the attributes that he showed at Villa, putting a shift in, not giving up, it sounds, kind of a bit cliched, a bit kind of, that's the minimum you should expect, but he made himself a career. He was at really the championship level, which arguably was probably his level, really, you could say, but very well thought of at Cardiff, very well, played at Blackburn, obviously not with us anymore, tragic ending, another whole ender in the sky. But in terms of that decade, you like seeing young players coming through, and it was refreshing to see him play kind of left midfield. It was half a season under O'Leary whereby we looked a decent team. I mean, it all went downhill after that. But in terms of, he gets an honourable mention from me, and realistically, I think the only other person you could throw in there who played left wing, who, we're talking about how Young's reputation has been restored. This particular player's hasn't yet, so I think he's automatically disbarred for that. You got Stuart Downing, really.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Peter Whittingham, and God bless his soul. Unfortunately, I think for him, whilst he showed promise and he went on to have a fantastic career for Cardiff, he was in Gareth Barry's shadow, wasn't he? Very much so. He was the next Gareth Barry and didn't quite get the opportunities to live up to or forge the same career as him. Stuart Downing started off brilliantly. I remember signing him and seeing him in his aircast boot going across Bodymore Heath. Scored on his debut against Portsmouth, scored some other big goals for us, was fantastic in the midfield that he was in. Wore the number 6 shirt, vacated by Gareth Barry as well. Popped up on the right, played on the left, scored against Liverpool when we beat them 1-0 last game of the season, and then went and did us dirty with the way in which he left, really. If he hadn't have done that, he may have gone on to have been a very good centre midfielder for us, who we thought fondly of. Apart from him, you're right. I mean, you've got Nzogbia, who was there for one season in that period. You've got Robert Pires, who played for us for a while. Yeah. Oyvind Leonardson, Hassan Kashlul, and a player who I really liked, more of a number 10 maybe, but played a lot on the left for us, scored some cracking free kicks. Sean Maloney, what a guy. Shame he got homesick, went back to Celtic, and he did very well, and he's doing very well for himself now as a coach for Belgium.
Yeah, he was another what if, really. It's a shame it didn't work out. Potentially, can you throw in Hitzelsberger as left midfield, or we've got to have him more as centre, I'd say?
I think we've already put him forward for centre mid.
Well, I love Hitzelsberger, so I'm gotta have another go to get him in the team, but I think we've...
Ashley Young, isn't it?
Yeah, for that decade, definitely. So, fairly unanimous for that decade. So, moving on to the last 10 years, we will leave aside the obvious choice. Is there anybody else who comes close for you in terms of consideration for that left midfield role from the last decade?
Of course there is. Kieran Richardson. No. Fair play to Kieran Richardson, best player on the day in that 4-0 cup final defeat.
Yep,
outfield player. We know where this is going to go, but an honourable mention, you could say Anwar El Ghazi. I know we considered him for last week though, so we can't do him again. We've had a few stinkers actually when you write them down, but to be fair to this one player, under Tim Sherwood, he did very well for us, but he soon lost his spark, unfortunately, as he went into his second season. Scored a memorable goal against West Brom in the Cup. Scott Sinclair, left winger, probably could have been played as a striker for us in that season that we went down, and may have bagged a couple. Wore a number 9, if I remember correctly, out on that left wing, but he just seemed to fade away into obscurity before going on to Celtic and now ending up at Preston. I know he's not going to get in, but he's probably the second best winger that we had.
In terms of Sinclair, you mentioned that West Brom game, and obviously you have a team who you support, cliches till you die and all that. And it boils down to moments, boils down to games, boils down to goals, kind of individual moments. Okay. And that quarter-final against West Brom, I remember it was like Saturday 5:30 game, and Sinclair had been in a little bit of form coming into the game. Sherwood had come in and there'd been an upturn in the performances of the team. I mean, it couldn't have got any worse, frankly. There's always a bit of a rivalry with West Brom, obviously, some more personal than others. But that first, the atmosphere, in terms of if I was going to put, a top 5 Villa Park atmosphere, that's up there for that game. But the first half hour, we weren't really that good, really. It was quite a bit of a nothing game. Sinclair had done nothing. And then he just, something clicks and he's like, right, this is my game now. And then he just absolutely terrorised them for the next hour. And I remember that performance. The atmosphere only got better. And it's like, yeah. I mean, that is, in terms of, even though it's a cup game when you're trying to win trophies in the cup, it's not always about being the best team or winning all the time or winning all the trophies. So moments like that, in terms of just seeing a player on his day absolutely terrorise kind of a local rival, and the crowd absolutely being with him every step of the way. I mean, it wasn't just him on the day, obviously, but yeah, I do remember that in terms of a performance at Villa Park as being one of the best ones I saw. And he didn't even turn up, for the first half hour. So I do think he gets an honourable mention. Yeah, I think realistically then you are kind of scrambling. Ngzogbia maybe had a couple more seasons, but didn't quite work out for him.
He did all right under Sherwood again, FA Cup final season, but yeah, you're right, he didn't do anything else.
I mean, I don't think this guy qualifies, but because we both saw him score away, we saw Brett Holman score away at Norwich in the League Cup. I mean, for the money we paid for him, you can't really complain, but, workmanlike, I think, at best, you could say.
It's the same as like a Joe Cole, isn't it? Joe Cole came in and tried hard for us, but he scored a goal against Burnley as well when we drew 1-1.
Got injured, probably. I don't even remember if he did, but it seems like something Joe Cole would do.
And that is about it. Andre Green could have gone on to do something, and then the other end of the scale, you got Alexander Tarnev, who most memorable thing for Villa was being on loan at Celtic and spitting at or racially abusing somebody.
Yeah, he won't go down in the Villa Hall of Fame.
No.
Really. That was, I'm sure we talked about it before. We'll talk about it again in many different contexts. Instead of buying 2 or 3 quality players, that was just buying 10, job lot, kind of. A bit like, what's a TV show? Like Storage Hunters, where, you buy, a locker, and you don't know what's in it until you've spent the money. That was basically Paul Lambert's transfer policy. And Tarnev was kind of at the back of the lock-up, kind of had seen, better days. You thought with a bit of TLC might freshen up and be able to get a profit. There was no profit.
But for all of those ones, at the very end, there was a diamond in the rough.
And he was there all along.
Yeah. Jack Grealish, he had... I liked him as an 8 in that run where we got to the playoff final, but he was very much in his element out on that left wing, and I think a lot of Villa fans wanted to see him as a 10, really getting on the ball and driving at teams and having more of a free role. But he redefined that left wing role, really. He was similar to, not on the same level of ability, though he did cost 100 million more than him, similar to a Messi type of player in regards to he wasn't an out-and-out winger. He was your creative, give me the ball and I'll cut inside and I'll just drift round and I'll cause problems other ways. You never thought, he's got electric pace, he's going to go down that wing. You thought more, you give him the ball and he'll bamboozle you. And it only has to be with a 2-yard pass to Matty Target, but he'll do something and he'll cut you open.
Yeah, you don't need pace if you can't get the ball off him. And you know, there's lots of stats, you know, in terms of number of fouls. You know, for a long time, people, mainly opposition fans, would say he was a diver, you know, didn't miss an opportunity to go on the floor. But if you've been kicked that much, then of course you're going to go down, and, you know, nobody could get near him. And I think in terms of, I think we knew he had a bit of ability. You know, he burst into the scene, and then, funny enough, I think he fell out with Lambert, actually, which wasn't great. And, you know, there was talk about, is he ever going to really make it at Villa? You know, as you mentioned, Shearer put his arm around the shoulder, made him part of the team, but then he drifted out again. I mean, Remy Gard fell out with him. Then it wasn't really until Dean Smith came in and kind of said, you need to do more, basically.
Yeah,
made him captain, which I think raised eyebrows at the time, but it turned out to be a masterstroke, really. Turned out to be the making of him. And just, it was a pre-season game against Kidderminster Harriers. So, you know, they're not the greatest opposition in the world. So you can't really judge it like playing at Old Trafford, for example. But I've very rarely seen a game where one player is just so much better than everybody else on the field. I mean, Villa weren't playing their first team, so that kind of brings it in as well. But he was just, you know, he didn't have the yard of pace to kind of physically, but his brain, he was like 10 yards ahead of anybody else, and nobody got anywhere near him. And I think in terms of especially that season, and the second season in the Premier League just gone, nobody, even though they've seen what he could do, could get anywhere near him, and he just got better and better and better. And you go back in terms of, even before then, in terms of iconic moments, talk about Scott Sinclair scoring against West Brom in the league, in the FA Cup. Grealish, you know, you've got so many moments you can mention. You know, he put him in his compilation video, actually, in terms of when he left. You got the Blues game. You've got arguably the most important goal in, we're talking about the last 30 years for this team, arguably the most important goal in the last 30 years, West Ham away.
Yeah. I actually thought you were going to say Rotherham away for a minute, but you're right, West Ham away. But that Rotherham away one, where he danced past everyone, played that beautiful 1-2 with El Mohammadi. He scored a great goal against Rotherham at home when we won 3-0. That was under Di Matteo, our first year in the Championship. We were there in the Doug Ellis stand for that. He did a lot. He scored some big goals. He was a big game player for us. And, you know, it's a shame to see that he's only started diving since August, and he's brought that into his game, really, because he's a lovely lad, or he was a lovely lad.
I'm not on board with that in terms of, I don't think he's a diver. I don't think he's diving at City. I think he gets kicked. He gets kicked. He goes down, and that's kind of, I don't think that's diving. I think that's and we were talking about in terms of the best teams are kind of snidey teams, really. And Man City, in terms of their play, in terms of tactics, are very good, but they are a snidey team. So as part of the pepification of any player coming in, it's going to be, if you get contact, go down. I mean, so I don't think it is kind of making something out of nothing, which is what I would call a dive. In terms of, if you don't get kicked and you fall over, that's a dive. If you get kicked and you go down, that's not a dive. It's kind of, I don't think, and that's what he was doing at Villa. I mean, I can't recall any.
I've got these lovely claret and blue glasses, right? And I'll be honest with you, if he was at the Villa doing that now, no, it's not a dive, it's not a foul. But there's still a little bit in there for me. You know, it hurts the most when your greatest players and the ones that you like leave. It was the same with Gareth Barry, James Milner, Ashley Young. You have your favourites, the ones who are your whole end heroes, regardless of whether you sit in the Trinity or the North Stand or wherever else, or whether you listen to it on the radio every week. The departure of Jack Grealish, despite him doing it in the correct way, really, you know, there was no big sulking to the media or anything like that. There's the rumours of what happened in that little camp before he actually signed for Man City. But it's those ones where those players leave that hurt the most, and they take the longest time for you to get over, really, So, no, he isn't a diver. I'm very much of the opinion, with any footballer, if you're running at a certain pace and you get caught, you probably are going to fall over. If you're running for the bus and you hit a little bit of a raised pavement, you're going down. If a leaf hits you and then you fall over and whatnot and then bang your head, you get what you deserve. But he was such a good player. He was tactical. Like you said, he had those pepifications. You watch some videos and he deliberately puts his leg out and catches the leg of someone else and gets fouled, and you think, fair play. I mean, Danny Ings was doing that this season. I'd be loving it.
Yeah, and Bruno Fernandes, anybody? In terms of that, when
he can foul you.
Yeah, when he's not busy missing penalties, he's 9 up. So, in terms of that decade that we've just had, I think it's Grealish, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to put Scott Sinclair there. No, it is Grealish, and I think we know full well it comes down to one of two players, really. It's not going to be Tony Daly. Great, thank you for your service, and to the other players who we've said. It really boils down to Grealish or Young, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. Who wants to grasp this nettle first? Is it a difficult decision for you? Is it an easy decision for you?
No, it's difficult. It's a really difficult decision for me. I mean, I've got my thoughts as to who I think you'll pick, and I think you knew last week who you'd pick. And if it's who I think, I didn't agree straight away. For me, Ashley Young was a great player. He was a great servant. He did everything right for the club. He wore the armband with pride. He went on to join Man United, Inter Milan, won lots of trophies. He was somebody who got Villa to the upper echelons of the Premier League for a few seasons, really, before we drifted off. But everything I've just said about him, you can attribute to Jack Grealish as well, and Jack Grealish won a trophy with the Villa in the fact that he got them promoted. Would I say that Jack Grealish is an Aston Villa legend? At this time, I wouldn't. Would I say Ashley Young was? No, I wouldn't either. Both very much cult hero brackets. It's really difficult. It's surprising they've had very much the same career for the Villa, apart from Ashley Young did it in the Premier League all that time.
Yep.
But Jack Grealish dragged us up in the end and got us up, and he kept us up. He's the reason that we're in the Premier League today, very much. So I think I'm trying hard to not convince myself as to who I'd pick. Don't know. What about you? I need a minute.
For me, as I said last week, if you were listening to the right midfield, I knew who I was going to pick straight away. For me, this was the easiest decision out of the 11 that we're going to do. It's Jack Grealish. He's the best player I've ever seen play for Villa in terms of natural ability. There's no other choice then to get him in my team, really. I mean, in terms of, I hope there is a final chapter for Grealish. We mentioned in the comparisons to Young. Young, I think his reputation went downhill in a few years after he left Villa. Unfortunately, I think the same's going to happen for Grealish, although if I'm at the game when we play Man City, I think it's a Tuesday night at the end of November, I will stand up and applaud.
I'll throw my son at him.
Yeah. I mean, you're the doctor's son, just to go and shock him. So, I hope he doesn't get a bad reception. I think there are going to be people who boo. I think it's going to be a mixed at best, which I think is a shame. But I think as time will go on, the good memories will raise more to the fore, and I can see near the end of his career a bit like Ashley Young coming back, for a year or two when we're champions of the Super League playing, Real and Barcelona every week. So I can see there being a final chapter for that. But even if there isn't a final chapter of Grealish in a Villa shirt, natural ability, hands down the best player I've ever seen. So there's really no other choice for me. And also in terms of talking about Scott Sinclair memories, I mean, in terms of there's certain goals, certain moments you will always remember. And that goal against West Ham, I will always remember, whilst I have the capability to remember, where I was, what my reaction was, how horrified the person I was in terms of when I was jumping up and down and I think they were trying to read a book. It becomes, part of your Villa folklore, really. And, I don't agree with the criticism that has gone his way since he left in terms of saying, he doesn't love the club, he doesn't support the club, otherwise, there was some bad press he got for an interview game on England duty. I thought that was just the local press trying to make a story out of nothing because it was a slow news week, and I think that was a shame. And I'm not, as I said, I'm not naive enough to think he's going to be getting a round of applause when, because you said it hurts when your best player leaves. And you can look at it one way, and ultimately he's gone to go and play in the Champions League, in the Premier League title race, where Villa aren't yet in the next few years. And hopefully we are challenging for Champions League in the next couple of years. But, he's mid-20s. You got the best want to, play with the best, and Man City are arguably the best team in the country. So I think we knew it was coming. The release clause was put in there for a reason, because we knew he was going to use it, which, when he said he was going to use it, that appeared to annoy people. We knew we were getting a year. I mean, you look at what could have happened if Daniel Levy wouldn't have been such a insert tight money-related kind of comments here. He would have been playing for Spurs, and we wouldn't have got, those moments in terms of the promotion campaign and in the Premier League. So it could have been very much a sliding doors moment. Our history could be very different. I mean, if we would have sold him, we would have gone bust, so we would have been in the Premier League anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned people wouldn't put him as a legend yet. People wouldn't put him as a legend yet. I would in 10 years. I hope he's reached kind of that level. Like Gareth Barry, people slagged him off when he left, and now he's kind of up there. We did the vote in terms of where he was on the fan hierarchy, and he's up at legend. He wouldn't have got that 10 years ago. I think the same will be for Grealish, but for current purposes, even though there might be a bit of heat in terms of me putting him in, for me, this was the only no-brain pick out of the 11.
Last week for me, it was Ashley Young. Easily Ashley Young, and maybe it was a bit to piss you off because I knew that you were going to pick Jack Grealish. But I think from thinking about it, Jack Grealish had a lot of moments. Whilst Ashley Young got us to the top echelons of the Premier League, played in the cup final for us, against Man United, and did very well for us as a player.
Great player. I mean, there's no doubt in that.
Jack Grealish got us into the Premier League. He lived all of our dreams, captaining Aston Villa, our boyhood teams. We lived vicariously through him. He got us back into games. He gave us glimmers of hopes in games which had already gotten away from us. He kept us up against West Ham. And we saw him rip Liverpool a new arsehole at Villa Park in that 7-2 win. We saw him score beauties at Old Trafford. We saw him score beauties at the New York Stadium. We saw the very best of Grealish. And the terrifying thing is he's only going to get better. But my pick for this, as much as I want it to be Ashley Young, I agree with you. I'll go for Jack Grealish. And I sound begrudging. It's because I can't look him in the eyes, Baz. I can't look Jack in the eyes. It still hurts today. But you're right. Most naturally gifted footballer, the best footballer that we've seen down the Villa for a long time. You imagine what he'd have done in that. You could put him in any team and he'd probably be the best player in any team. At the Villa in their history. You know, you imagine what the amount of goals Pongo Waring would have scored with him supplying them. You imagine what he'd have done. Would Peter and McParland have got in ahead of him? And in that 1957 team, would Grealish have been keeping Tony Morley out of the team as well? When we went on to win the league and get into Europe, would Grealish have kept Young out of the team? I don't know a lot about the past. I only know what my granddad told me and what my mum's told me, but Grealish fits into any team. He starts somewhere and he fits into ours. He's in our ultimate 11.
There we go. So a real moral dilemma kind of going on there. We heard it, going through those midfielders, but we have reached another agreement in terms of our 11. I mean, it is...
I hate you, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be...
But I love you.
We just got to hope that we both agree when we're talking about centre forwards that Carlton Cole he's going up front, in terms of to keep this streak alive.
Would.
Well, we can get 2 centre forwards, so we can pick them both.
But what about Bosco Balaban?
Oh man, I mean, well, it's going to be
too far, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a real, fight between the death for those three. 3 going to 2. I mean, it's almost not worth doing the striker.
Milan Baros, 2 goals against the Blues.
Goal against Man City in the FA Cup, I remember. And now we're scrambling in terms of goals. But Grealish goes into the team at left midfield. We'll put the vote out in terms of on the Twitter page at Talk Trinity. See if you agree between Young, Grealish. We'll put Tony Daly.
Yeah.
For a 4th choice.
No one.
We'll put Will as 4th choice. See if he gets in the team for left midfield. I'm sure we'll get a few votes, mainly because we'll put a few votes in. But that leaves us with the strikers, and we'll pick 2. Obviously, MAFS fans will know there's 2 spaces left. But yeah, I mean, we've touched upon it in the previous episode about the strikers are going to be a real tough choice, and that left midfielder was tough. I mean, the strikers, we have the opposite problem now we have with the left midfielders. We've got plenty to choose from, so it's going to be a good one in terms of our strikers pick. So listen out for that. We'll put the left midfield on as a standalone episode on Spotify like we have for all the others. We'll also have it as part of the main podcast this week, and then listen out for the striker one coming up, which will conclude the series for the Ultimate 11. And then, after that, we'll be letting you know what Villa nostalgia we're going to be talking about next.
Yep. Fantasy football at its finest. You're all right, mate?
Yep. You all right, Buck?
I'm doing good. How are you fellas doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Kind of Monday evening over here. You can see the nights are literally dark outside over Will's head. That's we haven't got doors over here. That's just...
Now, are you guys in Birmingham?
Yeah. Not by Cadbury World.
Okay, all right.
Whereabouts?
Cadbury World, is that like the highlight of Birmingham?
No, Villa Park is.
I'm in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, nice. I've been to Orlando a few times. I think I've been to Tampa once as well. Great part of the world, Florida.
Yeah, it's great over here.
You got the weather as well, ain't you? You got it all.
Well, it's hot as all hell. I'll tell you. I'll be honest with you, boys. It is bad out there right now.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it is 98 degrees.
Oh, well. Slightly hotter than you get over here.
I love it over there.
Do you come over much?
Yeah, so I've been over every year since 2015 for at least 2 matches.
Because your first match was against the Villa, wasn't it? The 1-0 when Benteke scored.
Yes, it was. And we started, what's his face? DeAndre Yedlin, the American, his first start at right back, and he looked trash. That was not a great experience out there. But yeah, Benteke just heading that thing in. Drove me nuts. Sherwood losing his shit. Just a wild time.
Well, they've had a couple of American players, haven't they? Because Clint Dempsey played for Spurs as well. They did well. Yeah.
He was actually okay. I mean, he was one of the reasons I got into Spurs originally is, he was playing for us for our national team and all that. And then He makes the move over there, scores a couple goals. But we didn't have EPL. We had no Premier League here except for 1 day a week. And it was a toss-up. It would be either like a La Liga game if it was a big match, or it would be a Premier League match. We didn't have it until once Clint Dempsey got there. Then we were on every weekend. So it was good stuff from then on.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll go into it more anyway when we start recording properly. But why Tottenham?
I've been asked that so many times now. Really, I think it was Dempsey. Dempsey was a big help on that. I also like Darren Bent quite a bit in the early run of my Spurs tenure. I think Darren Bent played for Villa too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, goal scorer. I love that guy. But I don't know what it is, guys. It's like anything. It just falls. I've been watching, Man U was huge over here in the mid 2000s. And then all of a sudden I just watched a Spurs game with Gareth Bale and it was over. It was just, this is my club. This is the only club I care about. And then once I actually got over there, it was done. I mean, I had the best time. I was a solo traveler. I went to that Villa match. I sat next to an old geezer who his son sold his ticket to me without even telling his dad. So I showed up to the match and he goes, "You put on some weight, boy." It was good, man. It was good.
Have you been to the new stadium?
I have, yeah. I've been over there 3 times now. I went to the Buccaneers game, the NFL game there in 2019, and then I went to Watford. Truth be told, I've never seen Spurs win live. Been to 12 matches, and our record is 0-6-6 in those 12.
You're coming on Saturday, though, aren't you? You've got my ticket that I sent you for the game. Yeah.
I'll take it if you got it, but it's going to be tough getting over there these times,
I suppose, did the Bucks win when you saw them play?
No. They got killed. Anytime I go to Spurs, they lose. Bucks, Bills, doesn't matter. Tottenham, we lose.
Oh, man. I mean, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Tottenham, to be honest with you. My brother was a Tottenham fan. My brother supported a few teams, United, Villa, and then he became a Tottenham fan because of Gary Lineker, and now he supports the Blues just because they're local to him. So I've always liked Tottenham, especially when they had like Les Ferdinand, Teddy Sheringham, Ginola, those sort of like Jamie Redknapp as well for some reason. But great team, really good attacking team. Always liked them. And when they moved to the 4-3-3 formation with the defensive midfielder, Eric Dyer normally, who'd drop in between Alderweireld and Vertonghen and sort of change it to a 3-4-3. It just seemed a little bit ahead of our time in regards to the Premier League under Pochettino. So, yeah, exciting team to watch, to be fair.
They were at one point. It's gotten bad. I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention to them over the last 2 years, calendar years. If we go 2019, 2020, this year, it's really rough being a Spurs supporter. We were so close to the sun. It's like Phoenix rising. And all of a sudden, the way things have unfolded over the last 2 years, it's just been a steady collapse. And you guys are getting me at I'm susceptible. Like, I'm an open book right now. I feel terrible about what I'm watching at Spurs every weekend. And if folks want to hang their hat on 3 wins for the first 3 matches, I just don't see how you could quantify that to good performance. 1-0 wins, you can't get 38 of those. It's not possible in the Prem. So what are we looking at with Spurs? It was fake. It wasn't real for those first 3 matches. Man City 1-0, I'll take that all day. The problem is what we saw in the next 2 matches was a team that is struggling to find their identity. And this team going into this Villa match, I'm sorry, boys. I'm actually happy for both of you because I feel zero confidence with it. And I'm okay saying that. I don't need to be a sunshine pumper. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I'm Spurs, so we're gonna play well. We haven't played well, boys, for 2 years consistently. It hasn't happened. The fact is, Spurs have 4 goals through 6 matches, and then we are going off 3 straight London derbies, conceding 9, scoring 1. And Chelsea or Crystal Palace, Chelsea, abysmal matches. And then I woke up yesterday and we had to deal with that. So honestly, I think that Villa going into this weekend, I think the Villa comes out and they get a strong victory over Spurs, to be honest. I just don't see it.
I mean, looking at this from 2 ways, I saw Palace versus Spurs, and I was impressed with Palace. Palace put you under a lot of pressure all the way through. They played with a high intensity, but you never got going at all. And the sending off obviously didn't help either. But with the Villa, the only good thing for you maybe is that whenever a team needs a win, you call in Aston Villa and you tend to get that win, is what usually happens, or if there's a team that are doing really, really well, you don't want to play the Villa because they'll get a jammy win over you.
And I suppose on the positive side, you can't play as bad as you did yesterday. So it's the only way is up.
3 straight weeks, my man. 3 straight weeks of this. So it's only going to get worse.
Guaranteed win Saturday or Sunday. Guaranteed to win.
I don't think so. I don't see it that way. I see Spurs as, like I said, we're struggling to find an identity. Spurs don't know where to go. And Harry Kane, I will be very public with this on my podcast, Talking Tottenham Podcast. Harry Kane, his heart is not in it. Missed a sitter in the 63rd minute of that Arsenal match. That could have kind of straightened the ship out for us. It didn't happen. It looked like he didn't care about that opportunity where he's usually burying those in the back of the net. To see him just scoff at that chance, that told me everything I needed to know about where his head is. And let's be honest, he was vocal. You had that Neville interview that he had just walking around a golf course, for Christ's sake. What in the world was that? And it shows with his play. I mean, 0 goals, 4 matches, boys. We're talking about the guy who has been the preeminent scorer in the Premier League for the better part of 6 seasons. And all of a sudden, it's like he's not even waking up to do his job. Yeah, and that's harsh criticism, but real.
Well, he's the best English striker since Alan Shearer, isn't he? He's the most Alan Shearer-like striker that England have had since Shearer. And I suppose, we were bemoaning our luck with the whole Grealish saga over the summer. But when you mentioned that, I suppose we're actually in a better position because Grealish has gone now. You move on from it. You haven't got somebody who's sulking round, pulling their socks up a little bit and diving on the floor. Whereas you've now got Harry Kane, who's openly walking around the golf course and telling other people, I don't want to be here anymore. And he hasn't actually come out and said he wants to leave properly, has he? Like, he hasn't put in a transfer request. And I know Grealish didn't, but Grealish had that release clause put in, and he had it put in for a reason. And maybe he helped us out a little bit because we got 100 million for him. But still, we're probably better off than you are because we've got 11 players on the pitch rather than 10 because you've got to play Kane, haven't you, really? Because any minute now, he could go and score a goal and start again.
So I think the sad part about the Kane saga is just what you noted. You got your 100 mil for Jack Grealish. You understood the player, not that he's bigger than the Villa, but he had bigger aspirations. He wanted to go win titles. He wanted trophies, that whole thing. He's in the right spot for that, right? But Spurs, when I look at it now, I was calling to sell Harry Kane all summer long. It just made sense. If you have an opportunity, and I know it will never be a 150, a 160, like all the talking heads were saying, it won't be that. We know that. But if you can cash in at 120 for Harry Kane, take it and then buy players and build. We're in that rebuild form right now where I think this club's at a crossroads. We have a bunch of players that have been around for a long time. They've been, quote unquote, successful. I haven't seen them truly take it to the limit. We had our chances. We've had many chances, and they've failed to deliver in that crucial moment. Now, when I look at that, you can blame a manager, you can blame a player. It boils down to the collective attitude of that group. And Spurs, for my money, they have not been that collective unit where they can go out there, believe in each other, and believe in the end goal, which is get a trophy. I mean, it's been what, 14 years now for Spurs. That's far too long for a club like Tottenham. Not that we have a storied history past 1970, but we're a team that should be competing. They haven't done it. And now when I look at it, Kane, totally, he's just displaced out there. He doesn't look like the same player. And now what are we looking for in January? Does he move on? And what's the valuation of him if they do choose to sell Harry Kane in January? Is it 65 million? Is it 70 million? Villa made the right call by letting Grealish go, reinvest in the club. I think you guys have some fantastic prospects, by the way. I love Matty Cash. First off, that is my guy. My name is Matt, by the way. So Matty Cash, he gets it done for me every time. Buendia is a fantastic prospect. I think he's just a phenomenal midfielder, but it's McGinn for me. McGinn scares the daylights out of me. And I think that's just last year's goal he scored against Spurs. But McGinn, he terrifies me, man.
Yeah, you're a big McGinn fan as well, aren't you?
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier about how with Grealish gone, we've needed some players to step up. And I think McGinn has really stepped into the mantle this season of being the main man. I mean, we've obviously brought a few players in this season who've all contributed. But yeah, I think McGinn's becoming increasingly, well, literally the central presence playing in centre midfield. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised in terms of the summer. He wasn't really linked with a move away. Maybe people were too distracted with all the Grealish saga going on that they weren't looking at any of our players, which is good. But yeah, I think if Villa are going to be going up the table, then McGinn is going to be a big part of that.
Also a big fan of Danny Ings. I wish, Spurs, it's been just an ever-present story for the better part of 6 seasons now. There's no backup striker on that club. I would love to have Danny Ings in there. And I think that was just such a good addition to a solid football team. I think you have a really strong lineup. And that's what terrifies me most is we're going in this match. Let's just break it down. Your midfield, it outclasses Spurs midfield. And I don't think that's crazy to say. I mean, I think between Buendia and McGinn, that's it. It's over. And now Spurs are in a situation where we have to start Ndombele because it seems like Daniel Levy simply just wants him in the games, despite his inability to perform after 48 minutes of a match. That includes a halftime water break, by the way. He can't do it. So we're going to just shove him in there in place of players that can actually put in a full 90-minute shift. And that's what troubles me. Your midfield should run gangbusters against Spurs. I have no doubt about that. It's whether or not the back line can hold up. And, your back line is going to have a job to do as well. Heung-min Son is actually playing very well. We're starting to see the emergence of Brian Heel, who I think starts on Sunday. I think he'll be out there for Spurs. I think he's been kind of a fire starter for him. And he's a young player with a lot of versatility there. And I think I would love to see him take the place of Dele Alli, to tell you the truth. Boys, I don't know what to tell you. Things are very terrible at Spurs right now, if you can't tell by my voice. It's just not good. I'd love your feedback on Spurs and where you think they stand, because I'm hanging on. I'm on the ledge right now, fellas. I am on the ledge. I need you to pull me back in.
Well, on the plus side, Tampa Bay Super Bowl champions currently, so you got that to hold on to. Although I did see Stafford light you up yesterday, but obviously they're a very, very good team. The Buccaneers, they'll be there again. That's positive. I mean, in terms of Spurs, we're talking in terms of Ollie Watkins. There's been some rumours come out over here today that he's been linked with Spurs, and this isn't really going to make Spurs fans feel better, but I can't see how that would be a step up currently, the way the teams are. I think it's a difficult situation for Spurs with the manager you've got in charge, because it was obvious that he wasn't first choice, wasn't second choice, wasn't third choice, wasn't fourth, fifth. And you usually, in terms of when Mourinho, he's a very distinctive style of manager. You know what you're getting. He's very much kind of on one side of the footballing scale, and it didn't work out by the end. And I think it was the right decision to get rid of him, to be honest. The week before a cup final, maybe not, but yeah, I don't think Mourinho was the long choice for Spurs. But getting rid of him is one thing. There didn't seem like there was a plan of who was going to come next at Spurs, and that's boardroom level, where the blame's got to go. And usually, when you have a defensive manager, fans don't like it if it doesn't get results. They turn quicker, and the usual reaction is, "Oh, let's go and get an attacking manager next time," because most fans, even if the team is not playing particularly well, if they can see that they're having a go, trying to play kind of the right way, inverted commas, then you get a bit more patience. But Nuno is a less successful version of Mourinho, really. So there's a less margin for error from Spurs fans when you're seeing, you said, the first 3 games, win them all. But it's like, oh, okay, we're not convinced about this because we're not playing particularly well. And then as soon as the bad results start coming in, there's that less of a margin for error because, I'd see from a Spurs perspective, I haven't watched every game, but it's, if you're getting beat and playing well, then that's something. I mean, eventually, if you keep getting beat, you'll be asking questions. But if you're getting beat, not playing particularly well, that's when you look to the board to have a plan. And the way the summer went for Spurs, it didn't look like they had a plan. And that is kind of, Levy has the reputation, the master negotiator, nobody gets any penny out of Levy unless it's out of his cold dead hand, kind of all that. And there was all that focus on Kane, which I think fits in with what you were saying in terms of just take the money for Kane, get rid of that saga so you can focus on the team. I think that really overshadowed what Spurs were doing in the summer. The management incumbent, he had no say about whether Kane was coming or going. And, I think if he would have had the opportunity, to spend 120 million on his own players, he probably would have taken it, I would have thought, even though it would have resulted in losing Kane. So even though he's stuck with a player, as we talked about, he doesn't want to be there. He hasn't been able to bring in his own players. Hill came in and he looks like he might do a job. But you kind of, as you said, crossroads, that's how it looks to me, kind of from that perspective. It's kind of, you've got that team who got to the Champions League final. That's it. Even though it was only 2 years ago, it just seemed like a long time based on what's happened since then. And it's, in terms of, usually when things don't go well, you get rid of the manager, get somebody else in. So, okay, you get rid of Nuno. I don't know who you're getting in, kind of midway through a season. I mean, you're talking about in terms of, if you sell Kane in January, you can't replace a striker in January. Which manager are you going to get in? So, unfortunately, I don't think I've improved the mood particularly. But as you said, you've still got some very good players. I mean,
I like Tottenham. They've got a nice away kit. I really like it.
Yeah, I mean,
what was that?
I like your away kit. It's really nice.
It's good. Fun. The acid kip.
Yeah.
Really
nice.
And your stadium is absolutely brilliant, and so that's a positive. The way the pints are poured, kind of it comes up through the plastic glass.
Yep,
that's
pretty
good.
Cool.
I'll be honest with you. I think Tottenham are only a few players away from having a top 6 team. I think you get top 6 anyway. I think you'd be pushing there. I'm being positive for you now.
Yeah.
Right? You get rid of Kane. You get rid of Lucas Moura, for example. I think if Nuno could have, he'd have brought in Adama Traore. He'd have brought in Danny Ings if he'd have had the chance. I'm glad that we got in there before you, because I think after Harry Kane, Danny Ings is the next best striker in that sort of a role that they play. Calvert-Lewin's different to them, but Ings is very similar. They're dropping into the 10. You'd have bought Ruben Neves from Wolves. He'd have been a massive improvement on your midfield in terms of his quality, and Man United wanting him. So get rid of Kane in the summer because, as you say, you get rid of him in the winter, you're not going to get the money because Daniel Levy's going to want even more with it being so much harder to replace players in that window. And you go again, but you've got to look at that back line as well. Alderweireld and Vertonghen was so integral to your success as well, and probably the best centre-back partnership in the Premier League for a number of years. But, you know, hopefully you kick on again. I remember when you finished, it was third in the end, wasn't it, that one season when you're right up there with Leicester? I wanted you to win it more so than Leicester. Definitely. Nice attacking team. Wanted you to beat Liverpool. I'm hopeful for Spurs. I am hopeful for them. I like them more than any of the other top six teams, if you like. So, I mean, I hope you don't get a result on Saturday or Sunday. I don't even know what day we're playing. I hope you don't Sunday, get a result then. Yeah, but after that, most definitely. And it Kane gets a goal, you'll start getting one or two, and Kane will get a goal at the weekend.
Well, here's the problem. You had mentioned you don't think there's a plan in the boardroom. That's what I see. I think the plan is simply let's sell more boxing events, let's sell more NFL games, and we're not worried about the football. And really, that's what troubles most Tottenham supporters that have their head on straight, is simply we're trying to be this world-class brand. We are sticking to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, yet Spurs don't have the ability on the football pitch, which is what Tottenham Hotspur is. So whether or not they have the ambitions, I think they have the ability. It's just a matter of showing that ambition, showing that you care. I want Spurs to care. It doesn't look currently like they do. And with Nuno, I know it's easy to pinpoint this manager made this wrong decision. I didn't like this substitution, but numbers matter. And when numbers come into this, shots per game for Spurs, 19th in the Premier League, 19th. Shots conceded per game, 18th. XG, 19th. We're not talking middle of the table at this point. We're talking full-on crisis mode. Those 3 wins at the beginning of the season covered up a lot of the cracks. I'm terrified of Villa on Sunday. I really am. And I'm hoping that Spurs can at least show up. Spurs can put up 2 goals. We've been unable to do that through 6 Premier League games this season. That's troubling. So unless Spurs score 2 goals, they're not getting past the Villa. It's not going to happen, fellas. It's just not going to happen. And I mean, I know I'm coming from a place where, yeah, you lose 3 on the bounce, you're going to feel like crap. But it's hard to shake this feeling that has been with Spurs and with Spurs supporters with their head on straight for 2+ years now. It has not looked good. And this is just not a great matchup for us. Like I said, your midfield, they should have their run at Spurs with 0 problems. It'd be great if we started Ollie Skip, because he seems to be the only one that can actually put in a shift on defense. As young as he is, he's a 20-year-old that looks 38, but that's the kind of guy I want suiting up for Spurs.
So 4-0 Spurs then. That's where we're going.
You know, I mean, I
don't see it, man. I don't see it.
I'm very confident at the moment, regardless of who we play. And you know what? I take into consideration Man City with this, because I think there's that added something for that game now. I'm confident that if a team scores 2 past us, we'll go and put 3 or 4 past them just at the moment. And I think that you will score 2 past us at the weekend, but I also think we'll put 3 or 4 past you. Unfortunately, like you say, with that crossroads, you've had aging players who you've filtered out over the last couple of seasons for Vertonghen first and Alderweireld. Next is going to be Hugo Lloris, most likely.
Yep.
Galini is not a good enough backup goalkeeper to replace him. And you mentioned about Daniel Levy as well. I think he thought he got all the Tottenham fans back on side when he brought Bale in last year. And, you know, the return of the prodigal son, the player who we made the 3rd best player in the world. Gareth Bale was not interested. He's past his prime. He didn't care. you'd have been much better off turning round to Borussia Dortmund and saying, do you know what? Here's however much money we will have Jadon Sancho, or going to the Blues and getting Jude Bellingham from them at the time, going and get some good young up-and-coming players. A bid for Rashford around then would have probably prized him away from Man United because he was on the peripheral again. Or, you know, looking at some of those weaker Premier League teams and thinking, who can we get and turn them into a star for us, like you did with Moussa Dembele when you got him from Fulham all those years ago. You probably needed to kick on a year ago, unfortunately, but all hope isn't lost. You know, you start bringing in a couple of players. You've got some good youth players. Skip, Tanganga seems to be a bit of a monster as well. Reguilon doesn't seem to be a bad left back. I mean, he scored a cracking own goal on the page last year.
Yeah, he sure did.
But you brought in other players like Doherty. Doherty's not a right back, he's a right wing back. He's one of the best right wing backs when you play him at right wing back.
Totally agree.
Dyer seems to have found his form again in those first few matches, and him getting injured against Palace obviously unsteadied the ship. Davinson Sanchez was one of the hottest prospects in Europe, so why can't he be again? You know, it's probably that you get that midfield right with Heung-min Son on the left and a different striker up front, unless you keep Kane, and that those positive vibes and that rising up the league soon starts happening again. But like with us being Villa fans, it's been horrible for a few years until recently. And last season, you start to believe. And this season, we've even had Villa fans going, oh, we're going down. We need to get rid of Dino. He doesn't know what he's doing. 21 minutes of a Leon Bailey against Everton, and suddenly we're winning the league. Yep. You know, it's sports for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think.
Well, that's sports for you.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's just getting when everyone's on the same page, things go quicker and smoother. It's just for Spurs getting everybody on the same page off the field, on the field. There's square pegs in round holes at the moment, and it's just kind of once you get the system and the manager lined up, then yeah, I mean Spurs aren't a million miles away. It's just a bit, I think, yeah, crossroads transition, the words we used. I think that probably sums it up pretty well.
I suppose it's one of them, when your goal is to get European football, even if you scrape it by one goal, you've got a chairman who can turn around and go, well, I promised you European football and we got it. You know, you might have only won 1-0 every game and not had the greatest of football. It could have been a bit boring Arsenal rather than the exhilarating Tottenham that you're used to. But until he changes and he starts investing a bit more into the club and not being a Doug Ellis, who was our legendary chairman who just didn't want to spend money as well, you are going to be floating around that six. And unfortunately, and our chief executive said this not that long ago, he went, there are teams who are ready to be caught by Aston Villa. Tottenham, Arsenal, Everton are three of them. So if they're within our grasp, why shouldn't we be hanging on to their coattails for dear life? You know, why they've got to shake us off?
I believe in everything that you guys have built over the last few seasons, right? Going through the championship just has to be one of the hardest things. And I want to know from both of you, because I honestly think I just listed off some stats for you on Spurs. I mean, we might be talking about a relegation here. I know that's kind of way out in left field, but that's a baseball term. It's way out in the field, right? So with Spurs getting relegated, I need to know how to prepare for a championship season here, boys. I need to know what are the do's and don'ts? How do they push through? Because I think anytime I see a team that pushes through, wins through the playoff, which is, in my opinion, the most exciting matches in all of English football, are those championship playoffs. It's unbelievable in terms of just the intensity of those matches. How did you guys get through that?
Booze, mainly. But it was when Villa went down. Some teams are unlucky when they get relegated. Some teams have just one result that doesn't go their way and have the basis of a really good team. We were terrible when we got relegated. We were, it was apparent very early on in our relegation season that things were not going to end well. And then we made a managerial hire when we got rid of Sherwood, brought in Remy Gard. Looked good on paper. You could see the idea, but was absolutely terrible in practice. I mean, came in, the players didn't like him. He didn't like the players. It was a real car crash. And the team got gutted when we went, and we had a new owner come in and kind of all that stuff going on off the field. I don't think it'd be similar for Spurs if they did go down. I mean, I don't think they will go down, but I think the majority of the team would stay together, or you got young players coming in. And when Newcastle got relegated, they came straight back up, and Newcastle are terrible. And let's say Spurs are much better than Newcastle. I think it's in terms of when you're in the Championship, when you've been in the Premier League for a while, like Villa had been, you're the team to beat. So everybody looks to raise their game against you because you're the big dogs. Whereas in the Premier League, we were whatever the opposite of a big dog is, puppy,
small dogs.
Yeah. So it's a culture shift in terms of players expecting to get beat every week you're expected to win every week. And we, funnily enough, in terms of our Championship run, when we got promoted in that third season, we were rubbish for most of the season. It got to start of March, we were about 12th. We were nowhere near the playoffs. It was, we'd been losing games. It was quite a negative atmosphere, actually. And then just out of absolutely nowhere, 10 on the bounce.
Jack Grealish came back.
Yeah.
He was the catalyst.
Yeah, in terms of, I mean, for Villa, we had a game against Birmingham City, which was the second game out of the 10-game streak that we won. And it was one where the Blues fan ran on the pitch and took a swing at Grealish. I mean, I could make comments about Blues fans as regards he was a yard away from him and he still missed. But that was the catalyst, because as soon as that happened, I sent message out going, Grealish is going to score, man of the match. Of course, he scores the winner. Really gave us the momentum, and it was a wild. You mentioned the playoff games. Yeah, they were mad in terms of those moments, and in terms of it's not competing for the Premier League or competing for the FA Cup or big trophies, but there is something special about going to the playoff final and winning. Especially the year before, we went and lost in the final against Fulham, and that wasn't great in terms of, it was kind of...
we were close to being extinct, weren't we, at the end of the day at that point, when Fulham beat us. And I'll be honest with you, we were lucky we avoided Leeds in that playoff journey. I think Leeds probably would have been a bit too much for us. But there we go. The thing with us when we went down, as Baz says, everybody thought we need to go and beat Aston Villa, and Aston Villa thought, well, we can just turn up and beat you. A lot of them did. I remember Ross McCormack joining us, and it was meant to be this amazing signing, and that because he was a proven Championship goal scorer, and he captured a lot of Villa fans and won them over in his first interview when he said a point isn't good enough for Aston Villa. So people are on his side, but then he decided to lock himself in his house and couldn't get out and get to training. So he lost all faith from the fans then, and it took us a long time to come to the realisation that you can't just get out of the Championship because of your name. You can't just get out of the Championship because you get the best players, even with John Terry, who would probably have been the best defender in the Championship that season, probably one of the best ever defenders in that Championship, the best ever on name alone. It took a real team performance in the end, and those 10 wins on the trot when Grealish came back, did what he did against the Blues, scored the belter against Derby. that, and with McGinn as well, and Tyrone Mings coming, and then becoming an actual team, that's what got us back out. And ultimately, that and Jack Grealish is what kept us up in that first season, really. And also those 3 months of no football helped quite a bit as well, because we were crap.
Yeah, and also the goal line technology not working when we played Sheffield United, and their goal didn't count, even though it was about 2 foot over the line. That definitely
Really
helped. Yeah,
Over the season. Yeah.
Oh, that's awful.
Not for us.
Yeah.
Not for us.
Yeah, we stayed up by a point, so it was brilliant for us. But no, the technology didn't work. I think
it was blocked, wasn't it? There were 9 cameras on the line, allegedly, and they were all blocked at the time of the goal, either by towels or by players. So it's something that the Villa have been working on.
Yeah, set pieces.
Yeah.
And then when it got to half time, the referee's watch went off and said goal. And like he went, well, I can't do anything about it now. I can't just let Sheffield United go and have a goal, because that's not fair on the Villa, because it never happened at the time, And then a year later, Sheffield United are bloody awful and getting relegated.
Yeah, it's the only time in the Premier League where the technology hasn't worked, and it was
favour.
It was marvellous.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, there's been plenty of instances here with the technology.
And in terms of the goal line,
lines. Yeah, line.
In terms of the goal line, VAR in terms of offsides and all, kind of all that. I think that's.
What were the celebrations like? I hate that I'm asking questions, but it's so good to speak to a Villa podcast. Honest to God, like it. So my first match at White Hart Lane was against Villa. So I have this like deep connection with Aston Villa. And I would love to get up to Villa Park for a game. But what were the celebrations like getting promoted? Was that one of the better nights of both of your lives?
Yeah, I was at Wembley. I was at the game, and to fill in a bit of a personal backstory, I was with, they are my ex now because of what I'm going to say next. So there was obviously that the playoff, we weren't guaranteed to be in the playoffs until kind of late April, start of May. And my ex-girlfriend used to be a teacher, and so they have designated holiday times over here, and it was the last week of May, which was also the week where the playoff final was going to be. So she said to me, "Oh, I want to go away on holiday that week." And I said, "We can go that week, but we're not going on Monday when the playoff final is on, because Villa might be in the playoff final." Needless to say, that relationship did not last very long after I had made that declaration. And I remember being at Wembley after full time and we won. And there was all sorts of issues about relationship. I won't bore you with them. But I remember sending a message to my brother going, "Definitely made the right choice." And I'd stand by that. She wasn't very nice. But no, in terms of, so there was kind of being there, I think in terms of, I'd also been there the previous season in the final where we lost to Fulham. And so there was a real pressure because we could have played Leeds and we didn't because Derby beat them. So I think there was a feeling that we were better than Derby and we were favourites. And it's always a slight worry being favourites because you're like, oh, everybody kind of, the pressure is going to be really on if everybody expects you to win the game. So having that kind of element on there and that pressure evaporated when I saw the team sheet at Derby because they had Frank Lampard in charge at the time, and I saw his team and it's like, what's he doing in terms of that? Kind of the formation was out, the striker they put up front was somebody who'd done nothing during the course of the season. So I felt quite confident after that. And during the game, I thought we were a better team until about 10 minutes to go, where Derby changed the system and started playing the way they should have done. At the beginning, they scored a goal. I think they had a chance at the end where they probably should have taken it into extra time and didn't. So for me, it was a great day. In terms of looking in terms of memories of watching Villa. I mean, it's getting in the Championship. It was our third season in there, and there becomes a date. There's a lot of clubs who come down from the Premier League and they're there for 3 seasons. Not very many tend to get promoted after that time because the money kind of runs out, like the parachute payments, and players start going, and kind of you're not seen as that Premier League club anymore. You're just another Championship club, and there's countless examples of clubs who are then in the Premier League going down again. Like you had like Southampton went down to League One, Wolves have been down to League One. Kind of they came back, but you got Man City did. I mean, you got Sheffield Wednesday who got relegated. Kind of Coventry kind of gone down, built themselves up. So real pressure game, but yeah, kind of when if you get a choice between doing things the easy and the hard way, but you can guarantee the outcome, it's always much more fun doing it the hard way.
It definitely is. Funny enough, I broke up with an ex-girlfriend when Spurs, you had mentioned beforehand that Spurs with the Leicester season, Spurs, that was their title, right? They blew it 5-0 to Newcastle in Newcastle last day of the season. Or no, excuse me. It was 3 weeks before the end of the season. So we had 3 more games. Get blown out by Newcastle. And let's just say there weren't positive conversations with me and the lady on that day. There were plans, brunch plans, could not make those because I was distraught. And when you watch your team just blow it, it's terrible. So different reasons. You were going for the win. I was because I was at a loss because of a loss, which is the story of my life as a Spurs supporter.
Now, to be fair, thinking about it, I should have known that it wasn't going to work with the ex because she was an Arsenal fan. So I should have seen that earlier. To be honest,
the lucky lines were clear there, pal.
Yeah, I mean, lucky as soon as I realised my mistake, kind of got that out the door and had a good time at Wembley. So win, literally.
I remember I was in Liverpool. I'd gone up to Liverpool for the day. And the year before, when we played Fulham and we lost, me and the missus, the wife, went away to the Cotswolds, and it's a nice place, but there's nothing to do apart from like look at the brickwork type of a thing. And there was no pubs with the game on. I remember I just about got some mobile signal, and we lost 1-0 to Fulham. And it was very much a case of, oh well, we haven't gone up type of a thing. And whilst it mattered, it didn't seem to matter so much. Whereas going to Liverpool, it was a case of, well, you realise the Villa are playing in the playoff final again. I need to watch it this year. There was that confidence. And to be fair to her, she was like, as soon as we got to train, it was, which pub are we going to? And she was like that because she likes to drink. But I was like that because of the Villa. And it was a great win. There were Derby fans in there cheering when Derby scored. But there were Everton fans, and when the Villa scored, and I was like, yes, type of a thing. They were like, are you a Villa fan? Oh, we hope you come up. And that great night. The rest of that night was, she got drunk. I had a couple, and we were in the Premier League. I was just singing Sweet Caroline down her ear all night, and she must have loved it as well. She's been to the Villa a little bit since as well. Enjoys going down there also. So yeah, it's one of them. I think things have only ever got better since for the Villa, since that playoff win, and since we got Dean Smith in, and it's nice to finally be on that upward trajectory, rather than thinking when we got relegated, do you know what, this is 2 years too late. We probably should have gone down before. And it was a shame because only a few years before that, and a player who you mentioned has played for both teams with Darren Bent, we were on the cusp of finishing top 4, and we didn't spend any money in the winter when we should have got Darren Bent, and we didn't. A year later, we're languishing round relegation. We get Darren Bent, and he gets us an extra 10 points at least, and we finish mid-table. And you just always thought as a Villa fan, if only we'd have got Darren Bent a year earlier, we'd have kicked on, we'd have been top 4, and we'd have been pushing on from there. And hopefully we'd still be riding high at the moment. But, these things happen. I mean, from a Spurs fan point of view, then, and you spoken positively about the Villa and not so positively about Spurs. And I'll be honest with you, I was expecting it to be a lot more positive around Spurs, but I haven't seen as many games.
Were you now?
I was.
No, I saw the game against Arsenal. I wasn't expecting it to be positive.
Yeah, exactly. Baz, you got a head on your shoulders right now, pal.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch that game. But you're looking at your squad really and realistically and knowing what you could potentially achieve this season, whether that's the worst or whether it's turning a corner and Harry Kane becoming the prodigal son again. Who do you think finishes higher this season? Tottenham Hotspur or Aston Villa?
So it's tough, right? You're getting me after 3 consecutive blowout losses. You're getting me at a stage where I know we have to compete in the papajohns.com Europa Conference League. We're advancing in Carabao. I don't know, man. I see Villa finishing on top of Spurs. I see Spurs as a 12th place team. I don't see Spurs any higher than that. And yes, we have Harry Kane, but the problem is there's no creativity in the midfield, period. It doesn't happen. The only creative player they currently have on that roster is Tanguy and Ndombele. Can't go 48 minutes. And then you also have Brian Hill, who I hope can continue with his productive crossing game. I think he's the best crosser of the football on the team. The problem is I just don't see a world where Spurs don't continue to struggle because there's no identity. They don't take enough shots. They're 19th in shots per game. That's bad. That's not Tottenham. And until we start to figure that out, I think Villa has an identity, and that's the difference. So I would say Aston Villa does finish. I mean, what is it right now? 8th and 11th, respectively, for the two clubs. Aston Villa is at 8, Tottenham at 11. I would say that's probably likely because I think you actually have an identity as a club. I think you have midfield that actually plays hard ball. We don't do that at Spurs. It just doesn't happen right now. It's a concern. But yeah, and I'm being realistic. I really think Villa finishes on top of Spurs.
Fair play. I mean, we've spoken to a couple of away fans this season. It's always great as well to speak to away fans about how their club's doing, but also to see what they think about the Villa. And it's actually been quite surprising, I think, because there's been a few now who have said that they think that the Villa will finish above their team, which is obviously very nice. Newcastle, I think I was very surprised that they thought that the Villa would finish above them. Everton fan Peter thought that Everton would finish above us, which I wasn't surprised at. But I'll be honest with you, without even considering that the last 3 games haven't gone to plan for you, I genuinely thought it would be a case of, yes, Tottenham will finish above Aston Villa, and it would be a very positive feeling from you. So to hear that, for me, is a bit of a shock. Obviously, Baz watched the game the other day like you did, so that's why he's maybe not as surprised as myself.
Yeah, I think we'll be in similar places in the table. I don't think it's going to be like a 6-8 point place kind of gap. And yeah, it does rely upon Spurs sorting their act out fairly quickly. The Villa, as you said, I agree. They've got their identity sorted. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days for Villa, but I think there's a belief in the process and where Villa are going. Hopefully, from a Spurs perspective, that's where Spurs get to relatively quickly, because watching in terms of the Arsenal game yesterday, it wasn't even necessarily, obviously losing 3-0 or 3-1 to Arsenal isn't great. And obviously the goal when Arsenal scored, it's like 15 minutes. I think you can see from the first 10 when it was still 0-0. That was worse than the actual goal, even though the goal wasn't great. It was just in terms of there didn't seem to be a plan on the pitch, apart from the defence would get the ball and it'd be, oh, what do we do? Oh, I don't know, let's oof it. And you just kind of, that was the shocking thing more than anything, in terms of you can have a plan and not win, or you can play have a plan and it not work. When Spurs were at their best in terms of when they played Man City, you could tell they had a plan. They didn't always win, but they were really go after City, really, and that's what I'd associate with Spurs. And going into the game yesterday, I thought I don't rate Arsenal particularly. I mean, I think they're obviously they were bottom after 3 games. I don't think they're coming bottom or getting relegated. But yeah, I would say in terms of asking the question, who's going to finish higher than Arsenal or Villa? I'd say Villa. And I'm quite a negative Villa fan, but I do think we're better than Arsenal. So
we're going to win the league
with the reserve.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking during this conversation here, fellas. I was thinking we're winning, and now I'm saying we. I think Villa's winning the league.
Welcome on board. But it was in terms of
just don't come to any games as a Villa fan because we'll lose.
Yeah, no, I can't go to any games. Period. But I'm almost restricted on that. The funniest part is with Spurs, there's no leadership on the pitch. Our captain is a goalkeeper. And I'm sorry, you need an open field player as your captain in order to be effective. There's one vocal leader that plays in the outfield, and that is Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who doesn't do enough on the attacking end in order to glean that type of respect from his teammates. And so, yes, does he put in a shift? Absolutely. But does he do enough to warrant the respect of his teammates and demand more on the attacking end from his teammates? I haven't seen that thus far. And honestly, it's dark times. I'm glad that I actually came in here and was being honest. Like I speak from the heart. If you listen to my podcast, Talking Tottenham, me and my podcast host, Danny Shakes, we basically, we just call it like it is. And I don't mind being real and being authentic with the thoughts on the team. The play has been dismal for 2+ years. So yeah, do we get wins from time to time? Do we feel great? Do we get on these highs that we ride for eternity until it crashes back down to earth? Yes. But this is the year, in my opinion, it crashes back down to earth. We're going to finish lower than 10th. It's not going to be pretty. We can't just make a move on Nuno. We're 6 weeks in. The guy's had the job for 3 months. You can't just cash out on that yet. I just don't know how this ends for Spurs, but I see a vision with Villa that I don't see at Spurs. And I think that's the key difference here. I think you've invested in quality youth players, but you've also done the thing that Spurs refuse to do, which is spend a little bit to bring in players that have played in England, in the Prem, and have had to work for their spot on their respective rosters prior to. They know how to put the work in. It's a working man's club, Aston Villa. They work. And you can tell when you watch it for 90 minutes that they do care about the other 10 players on the pitch, man to man. They care. I don't see that with Spurs right now, and that's why I'm pretty low on them right now, boys, if you couldn't tell.
Let's get a prediction from you then, if you don't mind. I know we've talked about how many goals we may score. We'll get a prediction from each of us.
Yep.
But as our guest, game this weekend, what do you think? What's your prediction?
3-1 Villa.
I'd be happy with that.
I'd take 3-1.
Not going to lie.
For me, before seeing the Arsenal game yesterday, I would have gone a different way. But I think in terms of the issues you've identified with Spurs, I don't think they get fixed in a week. I mean, I don't think you'll play as badly as you did against Arsenal as you did against us. But yeah, I think Villa will win 2-1. I mean, I think there's some, as you know, we touched upon. I mean, I don't think Spurs are terrible and kind of getting relegated or anything like that. But yeah, I think the international break is going to come at a good time for Spurs too, even though a lot of the team are going to be away with their respective countries. It's going to give the management some time just to actually try and think about how this group of players that they've got, who are the group of players who ideally they probably would have had this management team, or they would have had a couple more, how they're going to get the most out of it. Because, I don't think I agree with you. I don't think you can get rid of your manager after 6 weeks when there's nobody else on the horizon currently. And I think Nuno, I don't think he's a bad manager. I mean, I think in terms of it's not his fault that he was sixth choice for the job. I mean, he was, after the Wolves, he kind of meandered out at Wolves, Wolves kind of fell out of love with him a little bit. He was not going to get or guarantee the opportunity to have a job as big as Spurs again. So he was always going to take it. And, he's not, you're going to have to drag him out, I think, and I think he's going to do his best. And he's going to put the shift in. I think that's good. But yeah, I think it's not going to be an easy turnaround at Spurs. The quality is there to be able to do it. But yeah, I think Sunday is going to come a little soon for Spurs. So I think they'll all win 2-1.
I agree. I think Nuno will turn it round. I think he needs a full season. He needs some money, not only in January, but also in the summer as well. I think you'll see the shoots of positivity on Sunday. However, I don't think it'll start all rosy for you. I can see us being 2 or 2-1 up at half time. I think we're just confident at the moment, and if we can attack you, as you've mentioned, especially your midfield and that defence as well, I think we could go in a couple of goals up, and I think Ollie Watkins finally gets a goal for us. However, I do see you coming back into it, and Heung-min caused us problems before when you beat us 3-2 at Villa Park and he broke his arm. And Harry Kane's the type of player who he needs a goal, and then I think he'll get 1 or 2. I think you'll put 3 past us, but I think we'll get 4. I think we'll just edge it 4-3, but I think it'll be one of those ones where you'll be looking at it a lot more positive than us at the end of the game. I think we'll be happy that we've gone to North London against a good team, against a team who have been doing well positionally for the last however many years, and getting a 4-3 result. But I think we'll be 4-1 up. And I think in the last 10 minutes or so, you'll come back and get a couple of goals, and it'll be nervy. It'll be very much like that 4-4 draw that we had to commemorate one of Tottenham's anniversaries. I hated that game. Ewan's Cabal scoring right at the end, and Jermaine Defoe loved scoring against the Villa as well.
Yeah, he did.
But I think
yeah, he did.
We've grown up a little bit since then, and we are a little bit more resilient defensively. I think we'll just edge it 4-3. I'm going to go for. I think it's going to be one of the games of the season, and then Tottenham will go on to start doing quite well afterwards until they get to the park.
I think the international break does come at a good time for Spurs. Maybe they hit the reset button a little bit. Hopefully they do some yoga, some meditation. They start feeling better about themselves in general. That would be a big benefit for this club at the current juncture. But yeah, I think it's funny. You brought me on, and all I did was rag Spurs for 40 minutes.
Well, to be fair, that's usually our podcast about Villa. So it's been nice to...
No, it's all about being realistic. I haven't seen enough, guys. I haven't seen enough from this club, and it's been so long. Just so long since I've seen a knockdown, drag out. This is Spurs. This is the personality of Spurs. This is the culture of Spurs on the pitch for 90 minutes. Haven't seen it in a very long time. Hopefully it happens this Sunday. I'm not convinced. 3-1 to Villa.
I hope you're right. Obviously I do. I hope it's the 3 points for us. But no, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for taking the time to chat to us about the game going ahead, your views on the Villa, and also your views on Spurs as well. So what time's it on? Your end on Sunday, you're going to be watching it?
I believe 9 a.m.
Okay.
9 a.m. I'll be there. I'm always there. I'm always disappointed, always let down, but you always wake up with the coffee in your hand and a little bit of hope in your heart. And that's all I have.
Well, do you watch it a local bar over there with a number of Spurs fans, or is it a watch at home job?
Funny enough, Baz. So I'm very particular with how I watch matches, and not just matches. So that goes for American football as well. I don't do well in group scenarios at a bar. I am a big pacer. I pace back and forth. I never sit down. I barely breathe during the matches. That's probably why I prefer staying at home, although it might be safer to go to a pub and to make sure others are around if I pass out. But that neither here nor there. Yeah, I just pace around. I'm in my house, just moving the entire time. And I don't like conversation during a match. I hate it. So I am very much just a hermit in my solitude over here at the castle. That's what I do.
And you get your 10,000 steps in. So if it's not a win on the field, it's a win for the fitness.
Exactly. I'm getting the steps in.
It's amazing though, isn't it, how you have your routines and whatnot. And that, I mean, the first few matches or the most recent matches I've watched, I've had to have a Villa shirt on if we're going to win. So I've had it on underneath something, or I've openly had it on. I watch it from home as well. I don't tend to go out. Just say to the missus, look, I'm watching the Villa. She doesn't have an app and whatnot. And we played someone, I can't remember who it was, and I didn't have my shirt on, and we lost. And it was a bit like, oh, well, that's because I didn't have my shirt on. I do apologise, type of a thing. But the last game we played Everton, I didn't have my shirt on. I had my phone by me the whole first half, and we were rubbish. So I thought, right, well, I need to go and obviously put my phone on charge and move it over there. But we're creating chances, and I'm going to sit in this certain position. I put my feet up, and we went 1-0 up. I put my feet down and started to slide away a bit. So I quickly put them back up. 1-3 now, I'm telling you. So when we play you on Sunday, you better hope I'm not on my sofa with my feet up.
Well, I'll be pacing as always. Funny enough, the reason I don't go to pubs anymore, so it was the Champions League final 2 years ago. And a couple of friends were in town from out of town, and they're both Liverpool supporters. Well, they had mentioned, hey, we're going to go here to watch the final. So I called my dad. My dad and I watch most Spurs matches together. I've brought him into the family, Spurs family, which he probably hates me for, but he's part of it. And we go to this bar and we show up. I'm decked out in Spurs gear. My father's wearing Spurs gear. And we walk in. This is the linchpin Liverpool bar in Tampa, Florida, meaning there were 350 Liverpool supporters going nuts, drinking beers. And my dad and I walk in with the only two in Spurs gear. And I stared my buddy in the face. I said, I thought this was a neutral bar. He just goes, deal with it, grab a beer. And yeah, Musa Sissoko handball in the box, 90 seconds in, and the rest is history. It was a miserable day. So that's why I'm a hermit now.
I missed the first 15 minutes of that match. I remember going out with my brother to watch it. Couldn't get anywhere near the television screen to see what was happening. Vaguely thought that we saw that it was 1-0, and this was like 3 minutes into it, but hoping that Tottenham would win. But no, unfortunately, it wasn't. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. We're converting each other. Next week on the Villa podcast, we've got Baz and Matt.
Yeah. It's a transatlantic combo. It's what the fans want to hear on both sides of the pond.
No, it's been great coming on. Thank you both for having me on. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for taking the time as well. It's much appreciated. So good luck for the rest of the season after Sunday.
Well, we'll see you again. We might have to chat again, fellas.
Yep. Well, we'll have to pencil it in.
Most definitely, mate. Sound.
Yeah. Cheers, Buck. Good to chat. And we'll speak again soon.
All right. Cheers, fellas. Have a good one.
See you later, bud. Bye.